Well, we can now speak to Lord James Bethell, a health minister during the pandemic. Lord Bethell, you were there. You were present during this. What do you make of the former Prime Minister's testimony yesterday?
Well, I thought he captured some of the pressures on decision makers very well. There was a lot of conflicting evidence from a lot of different contradictory sources of data. It was really very confusing to know what to do. I think we did come at it from the wrong perspective. We hadn't learnt the lessons of the 2003 SARS epidemic. It didn't occur to the system to have plans for things like lockdown, test and trace and community testing in place. And therefore we started poorly. But boy, oh boy, we covered a lot of ground and caught up. And at the end of the day, although there were very many sad deaths, the statistics for Britain turned out to be better than many other countries.
James, welcome to Talk Today. Actually, the last point that you made is very relevant because yesterday that smarmy KC said, and I quote, "We were the worst in the world." We weren't. Boris put him right. I am not, by the way, defending, and I will repeat this all morning, Partygate, and I have great sympathy with people who lost people. However, you talked about pressures. Maybe that fundamentally showed us something about the people who had to make decisions. But I just said to Nick during the break there, this goes back beyond Boris, this goes back, you just said it, 2003. Why, as a health minister, can you answer this? Why in this country, supposedly the fifth most successful in the world, did we have absolutely nothing in place for something of this magnitude, James?
Yeah, listen, this is the essence of the puzzle. And I wish we were spending more time on that question rather than going through sweary WhatsApps. For some reason that I cannot explain, the medical experts from many, many countries, America, Germany, France, traveled to Korea, Taiwan, China over SARS, had a good look at what had happened when a contagious respiratory disease escaped, and came home and changed nothing, really. They didn't update the protocols. They didn't take on board all the lessons that those countries learned around building up community public health, bringing testing protocols into place, securing their borders, all the advantages that those countries brought to bear on the pandemic. And instead, we had, frankly, very old-fashioned protocols that just did not work.
And I think this is my point, James. All I hear about, and I accept, you know, as a Boris supporter, I'm as annoyed as the next person that this has gone the way it's gone. And I absolutely accept that he needs to apologise. But what I want to know is, right, this blame game, how does that help us? Gove the other day, I thought, asked a very relevant question to the KC and said, was it man-made? Where did it come from? Shut down like anything, which makes me think, and I could be massively wrong, whilst I understand the families wanted, it can't all be on Boris Johnson. If we were ill-prepared, then the scientists were ill-prepared, the country was ill-prepared, maybe he was out of his depth, but that surely is the lesson, and we want less tittle-tattle and more how do we learn from it, don't we?
Jeremy, I share your frustration, I really do. I fear that we're actually worse prepared for a pandemic today than we were even 3 or 4 years ago. We've shut down all the testing, the research into new vaccines isn't in place. The NHS, as we all know, is red hot under a lot of pressure. We haven't put in place any investment in public health. I mean, I could list a long, long list of problems that we've still got. And our mindset, I think, is still wrong. We live in a global world. We're going to be finding these highly contagious diseases at the back of the bat cave, as it were, in years to come. We've got to take our health security more seriously. Otherwise, it's going to happen again.
And Lord Bethell, you mentioned there that you think that we are perhaps even less prepared now than we were during the pandemic. I'm sure a lot of that will be to do with financial difficulties in light of COVID and a lot of the money that was wasted on initial test, track and trace, etc. Will there be a point in this COVID inquiry where ministers will be questioned on the contracts that they gave out during the pandemic?
Yes, that will come up in later modules. All the knotty questions around test and trace that you mentioned, on PPE, on the acquisition of the vaccine, that will come. It's going to take, though, a really long time. I'm not expecting to give evidence for a year or even 2 years.
Wow.
And that's frankly too long. We should be investing today to make sure that our health security is in good shape. And instead, the mindset has gone back to the old-fashioned approach of focusing entirely on waiting lists and hospitals and not looking after the health of the nation. The other big problem we have, of course, is that we are a fundamentally unhealthy nation. Obesity, dirty air, junk food, all those things are wearing us down a lot. And that's one of the reasons why we fought really hard during the pandemic, is because the underlying health of the nation is no good.
James, it's all centred on Boris and whether he's supposed to look coy or unhappy or whatever. You were there, you were the health minister. Do me a favour. What did you get right and what did you get wrong?
Yeah, I didn't really have time to answer that. I think...
Briefly.
Listen, okay, so I think one thing I felt that we in the health department got right is that we saw a huge problem quickly and we really tried hard to persuade the rest of the system to take it more seriously. And that did create, frankly, some blowback that you've seen in some of the WhatsApps. But gosh, we couldn't have been more energetic in trying to chase down solutions. We were collaborative and we were very positive. And poor old Matt Hancock gets a lot of grief for being a sort of Duracell bunny. But my goodness, that's what you need when you're up against it in something like a pandemic. You need someone who's leading from the front, who has a lot of positivity. What did we get wrong? Consistently, we did not hit hard, we did not hit early. That was the learning very, very early on. And time again, we were too slow. And so we didn't give the lockdown and the test and trace and the NPIs a chance to work properly because we kind of were off the pace. And that was, frankly, a mistake of mindset. It was a mistake of the arthritic nature of Whitehall. And it was a lack of ambition and creativity in our own thinking about the disease.
Lord Bethell, you said there that Matt Hancock was leading from the front. Can you really say that someone was leading from the front whilst they were grabbing their mistress from behind?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I regret the affair that he had. He's not the first person to have had a breakdown in his marriage and a divorce, but I do bear testimony to his leadership. He was the health minister in a health pandemic. Obviously, Boris was in charge and the prime minister and others had very important roles to play. But in terms of leading the health and care system, Matt did a fantastic job. He has great academic grip of complex issues. And that energy and positivity, I mean, even Boris paid testimony to it.
He did.
It really did make a big difference.
James, really appreciate it. I'm glad you're the first person we've had this morning without technical difficulty, so you've won an award for that. Appreciate your time. Lord James Bethell, 9:15.
Good luck.